Today I'm going to clear up one of the biggest misconceptions in explosive power and jump training, and that is the difference between a drop jump and a depth jump. Many athletes and coaches use these terms interchangeably, but they are two very different exercises with specific purposes. And it's important to understand these differences so you can use these exercises where they're meant to be used for the purpose they're meant to be used for. I've worked with countless athletes through various jump and plyometric progressions, and these two exercises are at the end of my jump and plyometric progression spectrum. But whether you're trying to improve elastic energy use or building raw explosive strength, knowing when and how to apply these exercises is the key. So I'm going to break down the techniques, the purposes, and the best uses for both drop jumps and depth jumps. And by the end of the video, you'll have a clear understanding of what, when, why, and how. As always, before we get into the video, check the first link in the description. You have the free MMA strength conditioning blueprint and the free jiu-jitsu strength conditioning blueprint. They are both there, covers everything you need to know about strength conditioning for both of those sports. There'll be more coming soon too. But when we talk about drop jumps or depth jumps, they're typically referred to as collision training or the shock method. Now, the collision training is a term, I don't know who coined it, but Dan Fichter is a big proponent of it. He was on the podcast a while ago. You can check that one out, where it's the idea of having the body hit impact or have impact, whereas the shock method is about using kinetic energy or the body falling to provide the loading. Now, pretty much all of this is taken directly from Verkhoshansky, but I'm going to provide my spin on it. So I've modified things slightly based on the way that I like to program and the way I've done it for many years. So I'm going to take this section verbatim from Verkhoshansky and explain it to you in layman's terms so you get an idea. So when free weights are employed, the magnitude of the muscle's working tension is a function primarily of volitional effort, as a voluntary effort. However, in the shock method, the activation of the working muscles is quote unquote forced. The external factor of the weight only assists the force produced by the muscles. On the other hand, with the shock regime, the external factor, in brackets kinetic energy, forces the body to mobilize the innate motor resources. If the sportsman conducts a vertical takeoff after a depth jump with the aim of flying up as high as possible, these conditions force his central nervous system and physiological systems to exceed the ordinary boundaries. The creation of such conditions in the training process is the forced intensification of the work regime, which becomes a potent training stimulus. Under these conditions, the body mobilizes any innate mechanisms designed by nature to be available for these and even more complex extreme situations. Sum that all up, essentially we're forcing maximal intensity without external load. And you could even argue it's supramaximal intensity that is spurring this adaptation. Now, if we go into the technical differences between the drop jump and the depth jump. So the drop jump's goal is to maximize elastic energy use. So we're getting that rapid eccentric to concentric action, and that means short ground contact times and minimal knee bend. Typically, we're looking at drop heights from about 30 to 60 centimeter boxes. On the other hand, the depth jump is to be performed to jump as high as possible regardless of knee bend and regardless of ground contact time. And therefore, you're targeting more explosive and maximal strength. So if drop jump, quote unquote, reactive strength, depth jump, longer ground contact time, more in the maximal strength and explosive strength, etc. Now you're looking at drop heights of 75 centimeters up to about 1.1 meters. So you're dropping from much higher heights during the depth jump versus the drop jump. Now you wouldn't use the drop jump technique off a depth jump height because that's just going to blow your legs up. So depth jumps performed with a high drop height allows the stimulation of muscles in similar ways as the barbell back squat executed according to the maximum effort method, not by the same means. So essentially we can maximally activate the lower body muscles without having heavy external loads. So the depth jump does not use a high level of external load, but to bring about the maximal voluntary effort, it uses forcible muscle activation brought on by impact with the ground. So essentially we can use the depth jump as a way to maximally activate muscles differently than heavy external loads from a back squat. Now, why use the drop or depth jump anyway? So the main purpose, as I mentioned on the drop jump, is to improve that elastic energy recoil, which we call the stretch shortening cycle, being able to rapidly go from eccentric to concentric. It's an adaptation that occurs when you're doing a lot of short ground contact style exercises. Also, eccentric style training where you're improving lower limb stiffness or reducing compliance with the ground. So essentially you're able to hit the ground like a bouncy ball and use that energy when you hit the ground to be able to increase force production and increase the rate of that force production. Whereas someone who is more compliant, think of like a water ball, you're going to dissipate a lot of that elastic energy as heat, and you're not going to be able to produce as much force. Whereas the main purpose of the depth jump is increasing explosive strength. So it means that the depth jump allows you to increase maximal strength through the improvement of neural mechanisms, and these being ones that I've covered plenty of times on the channel and the podcast: motor unit synchronization, motor unit recruitment, so being able to recruit high threshold motor units, and firing rate, so essentially be able to send a lot of electrical charges to the muscle to be able to fire quicker at the beginning of a maximal strength effort. So when would you use each of these, a drop jump versus the depth jump? So to increase vertical jump height in whichever combat sport you're in, where the duration of ground contact is not a limiting factor to performance, it's better to use the depth jump. This is according to Verkhoshansky. In time critical disciplines, to maximize the power output of the legs without increasing ground contact time, it's better to use consecutive jumps over hurdles. So if we go along my typical hierarchy of how I see combat sports, striking arts are typically what I would say more velocity based, grappling arts what I would call more force or strength based. You'll probably do more depth jump style plyometrics on the grappling side. On the striking side, you might use more drop jump or repeated hurdle hop plyometrics. Now, according to Verkhoshansky's criteria, he has a jump exercise progression. And that starts with jumps without weight, so just standing vertical jumps, broad jumps, repeated jumps, etc. Jumps with weights, barbell on your back, holding a trap bar, kettlebell jumps, and then depth jumps. And this is how he's used most of his progressions within his books as well. And I want to touch more on the progression because drop jump and depth jumps are the most intense form of plyometric training. That's why it's called the shock method. And it's not something you want to watch this video and then go do in your next training session. In fact, I very rarely, pretty much never program these two exercises. And you'll see that within the Sweet Science Fighting Underground. None of the programs have these exercises because it is the most intense form of jump and plyometric training, and a lot of people don't need them yet. You can kind of keep it as an ace card up your sleeve instead of going straight to the most intense stimulus and blunting that stimulus in future when you could have done something easier to make the adaptation happen. You can use any other jump plyometric variation to still make progress. When we talk about progression, I'm going to run you through my jump plyometric progression, which I actually covered in a previous video on plyometrics, but I'm going to go through it briefly with you again here. But before that, often we get told, well, I don't know if it's actually still a thing, but you're often told, hey, you need to squat 1.5 to 2 times body weight before you can do any kind of jump or plyometric training. Now, I don't know if this myth is still something that is followed. I don't see it as much now, but you know, you never know. Maybe I don't hang around in those circles. Typically, it used to be thought, at least, that you should strengthen the legs to a point where you can handle drop and depth jumps. Hey, you need to be able to squat 1.5 to 2 times body weight before you can go do these hard, intense plyometrics and jumps. But according to Verkhoshansky, and most coaches who know what they're doing now, if that was enough, why then do athletes who have a high level of leg strength, think your general power lifter, via the barbell squat, often have difficulty executing jump exercises? The problem isn't the strength of his legs, it's the coordination ability to efficiently apply this strength during jump technique. So during Verkhoshansky's jump progression, so his first thing is short coupling time exercise. We're talking quick ground contacts repeated over and over. So we're looking at extensive or submaximal jumping rope, ankle pops, tuck jumps, jumps over small hurdles, things like that, where you're getting on and off the ground and building that rhythm, but just short ground contact times. The second component is long coupling time jump exercises, so longer ground contacts. We're talking extensive easy vertical jumps, frog jumps, broad jump bounds, so kind of going horizontal instead of vertical, even on and off a box. These things are longer ground contact, and then it progresses from there into loading exercises. In both cases, the condition to have high performance during these exercises is the ability to relax the muscles before and after takeoff movements. That's the most important thing you can take away from this video. And we've talked about it a lot on the podcast on the channel. It's the ability to be able to switch muscles on and off, and that coordination to be able to allow speed to happen. It is what you develop when you do jump and plyometric style exercises. You develop that pre-tension to stiffen up just before you hit the ground so you can efficiently use elastic energy, but you have to be able to switch it off to be able to allow fluid movement and rhythm. It's why you can't just do a powerlifting style strength training program and improve athletic performance. Now, my progression is slightly different from this. I essentially like to start with extensive jump and plyometric circuits. So I like to combine short and long ground contact exercises and perform them in a circuit base. So it's almost like a work capacity block. And you'll see that within a lot of my programs in the Sweet Science Fighting Underground, where you'll do circuits of easy jump and plyometric exercises. It's pretty brutal, but it prepares you for the future exercises coming. So essentially any normal jump plyometric exercises that you do maximally, you're gonna do sub-maximally during this. Easy example, ankle pops, jump squats, lateral jump squats, ankle pops in different directions, etc. Then, or even during, near the end of this phase, we'll do single maximal jumps, single bounce and hops with sticks. So for example, single maximal jump, vertical jump, box jump, broad jump, etc. Single bounce, hop and stick, this is the short ground contact version. So you might go over a small hurdle and then pop up over a big hurdle and then just land. It could be done single leg as well, so you're getting that in there. It could be lateral. I did a whole lateral skater jump progression for you that follows this exact format as well, that's on the channel. Then you go more into repeated maximal jumps and repeated bounces and hops. So that can be repeated vertical jumps, broad jump bounds, repeating horizontally. It can be over hurdles, all of that. Then there's also loaded jumps that fits, I wouldn't say above this category, but very similar to this category. We can be doing loaded jump squats, trap bar jumps, dumbbell jumps, kettlebell jumps, etc. These are all in that. And then once you've gone through that progression, then you can look at adding drop jumps and depth jumps. But a lot of the time you don't even need to get there, but you can get there if you go through this progression. So the goal of going through this progression is that you're improving your jumping ability and performing these exercises, which we used in the previous step. So each one further challenges that ability and that rhythm to relax at takeoff, but also that pre-tension before you hit the ground. So I hope that jump progression helps you. I hope that cleared up some of the misconceptions around the drop versus the depth jump. If you're looking to start using these exercises and to be able to handle the intensity of them, please go through that style of jump progression, plyometric progression first. A lot of the time you don't even need to get there because some of these exercises are essentially pseudo drop depth jump anyway. For example, hurdle hop is kind of like a drop jump already because you're having to fall in the air and then rebound back over another hurdle. Regardless, give that progression a try, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.